Welcome back to this week's Outlook once again. What I would like to do is to concentrate more so on the calendar that we have upcoming this week and to see how we can actually go from the fundamental perspective and see if we can identify any sort of opportunities. Now, before that, I want to remind everyone that the Australian dollar New Zealand dollar trade is still very much on. You can see here the double top, you can see the rejection of the trend line. This is more of a technical play, and if anything, it doesn't really bode well with the fundamentals. But that said, we've had the New Zealand cutting rates, and despite them cutting rates, the New Zealand didn't weaken as much as the market would have expected. And so my anticipation is that the same will happen on the Australian dollar once if they get to actually cutting rates. But before that, we could easily see a fall down from this level. And again, if you look at this on the daily from a technical perspective, you won't see a lot. But if you look at that monthly, sorry, not the monthly, even the monthly or the weekly chart, what you'll find is that there's a clear-cut lower high rejecting that 200 EMA on both time frames. And again, the longer time frames and larger time frames will always trump the smaller ones. So it's pretty clear that this channel is being rejected and another trade could be on the horizon. That said, moving on Monday here, we don't really have a lot to talk about. However, the US dollar will have a member speech from the FOMC, which could be affected, as well as the Australian dollar could be affected by the RBA Assistant Governor De Bell speaking. Now, these speeches don't necessarily equate to any clear trades, but it could be something in the works there. Tuesday, however, we have the average earnings index from the UK. It's expected to decline, so previous 3.5%, current 3.4%, and if we get a reading, anything that's holding the 3.4 or at least above the 3, alongside the unemployment rate, which is 3.9, we could see some pound strength. For this reason, I chose the obvious pound dollar. Not too much of a fan of the dollar right now and to trade it, but it could work out easily on this pound dollar since we could see a higher low formation and basically head towards the upside based on the current deceleration. So you can clearly see this level here. You can see the higher high, we closed above the EMAs, higher low, and a possible break to the upside. If that's not the case, then we could see the pound Canadian as well reach the upside, but it's not as clear cut as the other ones. Moving on, the euro, again, German economic sentiment tomorrow, as well as after that the wage price index on the Australian dollar quarter on quarter, as well as Chinese data. And this is, I believe, will be crucial. The Australian data alongside the Chinese data will be crucial to that Aussie-New Zealand trade, because if this doesn't support if the Chinese data doesn't support the Australian one, we will definitely see declines in this Australian dollar. Especially if we double check and cross-reference the Aussie dollar US dollar, we can see that $70 to the 70 cents to the dollar to the US dollar has not been held as support, and the Aussie is going to the downside. So really the New Zealand dollar, all it needs to do is to not weaken too much, because the Aussie will slip below the 70 cents and it will reflect on all the pairs that feature the Aussie. Now, the Canadian dollar has CPI, year-on-year, median, trimmed, and common, as well as month-on-month reading. And alongside that, we have core retail sales and retail sales from the US, and this will be on Wednesday, which will be quite a cataclysmic event when it comes to dollar Canadian. I did like dollar Canadian. We talked about it a couple of weeks back for a possible upside up to the 135 and even above that. Didn't really materialize, but if we check the weekly here, we can see some clear deceleration. So it wouldn't be a surprise if the Canadian would power up in the meantime and drag this pair down to at least the 132, where we could see more value and more buyers getting into this market. Core retail sales again expected to decline in the US as well, month on month. So we'll see how that pans out. And then again on Thursday, once we are over with the Chinese data, we'll get employment change and unemployment rate from the Australian economy. And again, that plays into our Aussie-New Zealand trade. And as you can see, the reason I keep coming back to this is because there's plenty of fundamentals around it, as well as quite a clear technical signal, especially on the higher time frames. So this is why this looks to be a quite decent trade, especially if the fundamentals support it, or at least are in the favor of it as much as the technicals are right now. Now, one thing that could affect the Australian dollar in closing after all of this is the parliamentary elections. It's basically between the two major parties, the Liberals and the Labour Party. And so again, this will be held on Saturday and Sunday. And so next week, we could easily see the Aussie against this New Zealand down for a new lower low if things work out as we expect it to. And on the more technical side of things, there's the dollar yen, which again, if it retraces based on this weekly and the daily price action for a lower high, I would be looking to short it once again. On the euro yen, for instance, very similar to the dollar yen, we can expect a lower high from this channel that we broke out of. Euro New Zealand, a higher low to confirm the current momentum to the upside, as well as that pound Canadian that we went over. And that is basically it for this week. Not a massive exciting week, not a lot of opportunities lined up, but if there's one thing I've learned over the years of trading is that just because a Monday, Tuesday outlook doesn't look very favorable when it comes to data points or even the technicals, that does not mean that something could not happen along the way, along the sessions as the market opens, that would create very quick opportunities, and they would form very quickly and be very visible to all the market participants. And once assessed, once analyzed, we would have those trades that we are looking for. So that's basically it. Keep an eye on the market, and I shall see you in the next video. Cheers for now.